8 years ago, my wife, Roberta, abruptly left me and our children for an online affair. Now, after all this time, she has returned with a proposal to rebuild our family. I, a 40-year-old man, am deeply conflicted about the decision I face and want to share my story to hear others' opinions. Everything changed 8 years ago when Roberta, out of nowhere, announced that she was leaving me and the kids. She revealed that she had met a handsome man online and fallen in love with him. Her sudden decision shattered my world. In the weeks leading up to her confession, Roberta had been acting distant and behaving strangely, but I had dismissed it as stress from work. We had been married for over a decade and supported each other through countless challenges. I had known her for half my life, and we had built a family together, so I never imagined infidelity could happen. But one evening she confessed she had been talking to someone else. She blurted out his name, Isaac, and described him as the most handsome man she had ever seen. She explained that over the past 3 months, they had developed a connection that made her realize she was unhappy in our marriage. Every word she spoke pierced me like a knife. Roberta insisted she still loved us but couldn't ignore her feelings for Isaac. She needed to meet him in person to determine if their relationship could become something more. I was overwhelmed by a storm of emotions, anger, despair, and disbelief. It felt like the walls of our home were closing in on me. My voice trembled as I asked her if she was truly leaving us and the children for this man. She nodded slowly and told me she didn't expect me to understand, but she had to do this for herself. She explained that after much thought, she had decided to meet Isaac and start a new life. Roberta promised she would support us financially as much as she could, but insisted she needed to follow her heart. My world collapsed. I couldn't believe my wife was leaving her family for someone she had never met in person. My first instinct was to scream or beg her to stay, but I saw in her face that she had already made her decision. There was no turning back. A week later, Roberta moved out, leaving me to explain to our children that their mother was gone. Emily, who was 9 at the time, asked endless questions I couldn't answer, while Nathan, just 4 years old, clung to me as if sensing that something was terribly wrong. I felt shattered, but my children were the only thing keeping me from sinking into despair. When I told my family, their reactions mirrored my own. They couldn't understand why Roberta would do something so drastic. My parents urged me to take legal action, but I held on to the hope that she might come back. Roberta's parents were equally devastated. They repeatedly called her, pleading with her to return, but she told them the same story she had told me. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I was left to pick up the pieces for the sake of my children. Family and friends rallied around us, offering support and a shoulder to lean on. I focused on finding a stable job to provide for Emily and Nathan, but the pain of Roberta's betrayal lingered. During this difficult time, Roberta's parents were incredibly supportive, helping financially and babysitting the children when I needed a break. 8 years have passed since then, and Roberta's presence in our lives has dwindled to nothing more than a distant memory. While she occasionally sent money, she never contacted me or the children. Over the years, I have essentially become a single father, working tirelessly to provide for Emily and Nathan, while giving them the love and attention they deserve. Emily, who initially remembered her mother and tried reaching out, eventually stopped bringing her up altogether. In contrast, Nathan's memories of her faded over time, and he never mentioned her at all. Despite everything, both of them have grown into remarkable individuals. Recently, Roberta's father passed away unexpectedly. We attended his funeral, marking the first time in years that she reappeared in our lives. Later, the family lawyer contacted us to inform me that Roberta's father wanted to speak with me about his will. The lawyer explained that he had left some money for his grandchildren. My immediate reaction was to beg or plead for Roberta to stay, to do anything to stop her from leaving. But I saw the expression on her face, and realized she had already made her decision. There was no way to change her mind. Roberta moved out the following week, leaving me with the daunting task of explaining to our children that their mother wasn't coming back. Emily, who was just 9 years old, bombarded me with endless questions. But I didn't have the answers she sought. Nathan, only 4 at the time, couldn't comprehend the full scope of the situation. He clung to me as though he instinctively understood that something was seriously wrong. During that time, I felt utterly broken and empty, but my children were the only thing keeping me afloat amidst the overwhelming sorrow. When I shared the news with my family, their reactions mirrored my own disbelief. They couldn't fathom how Roberta, after so many years of marriage, could make such a choice. My parents pushed me to pursue legal action, but at that stage in my life, I didn't have much to go on. I also held on to a sliver of hope that she might come back to us. Roberta's parents, devastated by her actions, looked helpless and heartbroken when they learned what had happened. They repeatedly called her, pleading with her to return, but she told them the same story she had told me. Eventually, days turned into weeks and weeks stretched into months. I was left to pick up the pieces, for myself and for my children. Friends and family surrounded us, offering their support and shoulders to lean on. I focused on finding a job to create a stable environment for Emily and Nathan, but the ache of Roberta's betrayal lingered. During this difficult period, Roberta's parents were a tremendous help, providing financial support and babysitting whenever I needed a break. 8 years have now passed, and Roberta's presence in our lives has faded to little more than a distant memory. Though she used to send us money periodically, she never reached out to me or the children. Over the years, I've essentially become a single father, working tirelessly to give my children the love and care they deserve. Emily, who initially held onto memories of her mother, eventually stopped trying to contact her and learned to avoid mentioning her altogether. Meanwhile, Nathan's vague recollections of Roberta eventually disappeared, and he never brought her up. Despite everything, both of them have grown into remarkable individuals, defying the pain of losing their mother. Recently, Roberta's father passed away unexpectedly, and we attended his funeral. Afterward, the family lawyer informed me that Roberta's father had left a small inheritance for his grandchildren. While the amount wasn't large, it could cover their college expenses. I sat down with my children to share the news, reassuring them they wouldn't have to worry about paying for college. Their faces lit up with joy, and seeing their happiness lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. For the first time in years, it felt like the pieces of our lives were falling into place. Last week, I received a call from an unknown number. To my shock, it was Roberta on the other end. Hearing her voice after 8 years filled me with a rush of conflicting emotions, and I found myself momentarily speechless. She hesitated before telling me she urgently needed to meet with me. When I pressed her for clarification, she admitted she wanted to discuss an offer and repeatedly begged to see me in person. I couldn't understand why she was reaching out now, after so many years of silence. Despite my confusion and frustration, her persistent pleas were hard to ignore. I paused to collect my thoughts and eventually agreed to meet her, albeit cautiously. We decided to meet at a cafe near my office. As I hung up, a flood of questions and uncertainties consumed my mind. The thought of meeting Roberta again after all this time left me anxious. I resolved not to tell the kids anything until after I heard what she had to say. In the days leading up to the meeting, my emotions were a roller coaster. Memories of her abrupt departure, the struggles of raising our children alone, and years of grappling with her abandonment replayed in my head. On the day of our meeting, I arrived early, nervously sipping my coffee as I waited. Before long, Roberta entered the cafe, approaching me with a mix of hesitation and determination. She looked older and more worn than I remembered, different from the woman I had married. Our initial conversation was awkward and filled with polite small talk as we caught up on the years we had spent apart. It felt like we were strangers trying to piece together fragments of a shared past. Eventually, Roberta gathered her courage and explained the reason for her return. She confessed that Isaac wasn't the man she had imagined him to be. He had been hiding the fact that he was also a single father. She discovered this only after she had left us and arrived at his doorstep. Their relationship quickly became strained due to his gambling addiction, which caused him to waste all his money. They argued frequently, but Roberta initially chose to stay, unwilling to give up on someone else again. However, after her father's recent death, she began to reflect on how short life is and how unhappy she had become. She admitted she missed her life here and regretted the choices she had made 8 years ago. Roberta confessed she had considered returning several times, but never found the strength to face us. Finally, she revealed that her father had left her their lake house, a large property where we had once spent vacations together, before she left us. She explained her plan to sell the house, which would allow her to secure financial stability for the rest of her life. I nodded silently, listening as Roberta dropped a bombshell. She proposed coming back to our family, offering to provide our children with a luxurious lifestyle. She promised that if I agreed to let her return, I would never have to work another day in my life. Her words left me stunned. She assured me that we could live comfortably for the rest of our lives without worrying about money. In essence, Roberta was suggesting we reconcile and use her inheritance to build a better future together. I carefully considered her words, recognizing the potential advantages the inheritance could bring to our family. However, I couldn't ignore the pain and bitterness that had accumulated during the years she was gone, leaving me to raise our children alone. Although the idea of financial security was tempting, the hurt and anger from her abandonment were impossible to overlook. I told her firmly that while I appreciated the offer, I couldn't forget the past 8 years. I explained that I had been juggling work and raising the kids by myself, and even though we didn't have everything, we had built a stable life. I couldn't risk putting my children or myself through that kind of heartache again, nor could I trust her not to leave us once more. Roberta pleaded with me to reconsider, her eyes filled with desperation, but I knew allowing her back would mean gambling with our family's stability. Rejecting her offer weighed heavily on my heart, especially when I thought of the financial relief it could provide. However, the emotional wounds she had left behind were too deep to ignore. Since our meeting, my parents have been urging me to rethink my decision. They argue that after everything Roberta put us through, the least she could do now is ensure a better life for me and the children, one free from financial stress. They believe people can change, and think Roberta might genuinely regret her actions and want to rebuild our family. They even accuse me of being selfish, insisting I should prioritize my children's comfort over my own heartbreak. These conversations have left me spending countless sleepless nights questioning my choice. I haven't yet found the courage to tell my children about Roberta's return. I worry about how they will react, and how they'll process the idea of their mother re-entering their lives after 8 years of absence. I feel torn between the potential benefits of accepting her offer and the painful memories of the past. So I ask, am I the obstacles for rejecting Roberta's proposal and potentially denying my children and myself a better life? Update 1. Over the past few days, I have received thousands of comments and messages. I am relieved to see that most people don't think I'm in the wrong. Taking the advice I've been given, I decided it was time to have an honest conversation with my children about Roberta. The last thing I wanted was for her to appear in their lives unannounced and catch them off guard. This evening, after dinner, I sat Emily and Nathan down to discuss their mother's unexpected return and her proposal to rejoin our family. As I spoke, their expressions reflected a mix of curiosity and confusion. I explained that Roberta had inherited the lake house and wanted to sell it to help us financially. Emily, now 17 years old, reacted with a mix of anger and shock. She was confused about why her mother wanted to return after so long. While she admitted she sometimes missed having a mother figure in her life, she remembered the pain Roberta's absence had caused. Emily said she had learned to live without her mother, and didn't want her back. Nathan, now 12, admitted he had no memories of Roberta and didn't care much about my decision to reject her offer. He struggled to grasp the full weight of the situation. I told them honestly that their opinions mattered most, and that whatever they decided would guide my next steps. Emily was firm in her stance, saying she had no interest in meeting Roberta, while Nathan agreed, saying he was happy with how things were. As much as the idea of mending our family was appealing, I realized the scars from the past were too deep, and my children's well-being had to come first. I knew I had made the right choice to walk away from Roberta after our meeting at the cafe. Following this, I planned to discuss the next steps with my parents. Despite their initial push for me to accept Roberta's offer, they now regret their advice. I never intended to remain married to Roberta, but she left before we could finalize a divorce. Back then, I lacked the resources to pursue it. Now I've decided there's no reason to remain tied to her any longer. Update 2. Over the past few weeks, Roberta's calls have grown increasingly desperate. No matter how clearly I explained that I didn't want her back, she continued reaching out. As someone who avoids confrontation, I felt trapped and emotionally drained by her relentless attempts to contact me. I worried she might show up unexpectedly at my workplace or try to visit the kids at school. To address the situation, I decided to reach out to her mother, who was aware of Roberta's return and seemed like the only person who might help me understand her motivations. When I met with her mother, I shared my decision to end things legally with Roberta and expressed my frustration with her constant calls. That's when her mother revealed the real reason behind Roberta's persistence. She explained that Roberta's father had included a specific clause in the will regarding the lake house. Roberta could only inherit the property if she reconciled with our family, and I had to sign off on the arrangement for her to claim it. This revelation left me feeling both shocked and betrayed. It became clear that her pursuit of reconciliation wasn't rooted in genuine remorse, but in a desire to secure ownership of the lake house. Realizing the manipulation behind her actions, I knew I had to take immediate steps. I didn't want to remain in a relationship that was driven by deceit and ulterior motives. I have started searching for a lawyer to help me file for divorce. I also spoke with my parents, who now regret urging me to consider Roberta's offer. They understand that she hasn't changed and support my decision to move forward. They acknowledge that walking away from her is the best choice for my children and me. I've blocked Roberta for now, to prevent her from disturbing me further. My plan is to confront her directly when I serve her with the divorce papers. Update 3. It has been 2 months since my last update, and I finally have some positive news to share. As I mentioned earlier, I intended to serve Roberta with the divorce papers. To do so, I reached out to her, pretending I wanted to meet. She quickly agreed. Meanwhile, Emily and Nathan expressed their desire to see their mother one last time. They had many questions, and I felt it was important for them to gain some closure despite the painful history. We decided on a neutral location for the meeting, a local park where we had once shared many joyful family moments before Roberta left us. When we arrived, Emily's expression was a mixture of curiosity and doubt as she observed her mother, while Nathan stayed close to me, his body language reflecting unease. I began by telling Roberta that I was fully aware of her true motivation for reaching out after so many years. She protested, insisting it wasn't just the clause in her father's will that drove her, but also a sincere desire to reconcile and be given another chance. I shook my head in disbelief, unable to trust anything she said anymore. I told her that our relationship was over, and that the least she could do now was provide closure for the children by answering their questions. She nodded reluctantly. Emily went first, asking her mother if leaving us for another man had been worth it. Roberta lowered her head in shame, admitting she had been lost and made a grave mistake. Nathan, with a more direct approach, asked if her happiness had been more important than abandoning her husband and children. After taking a deep breath, Roberta confessed that she hadn't been thinking clearly at the time. and acknowledged how wrong she had been to leave. However, my children, perceptive and resilient, weren't satisfied with her responses. Roberta attempted to justify her actions, claiming it was a midlife crisis. As the conversation progressed, Roberta opened up about her struggles with Isaac and the painful reality of the life she had chosen. She described the difficulties they faced and how she eventually realized she had been chasing an illusion. Emily and Nathan listened intently, though I could tell they were skeptical of her words. They asked why she never stayed in touch with us, and whether she truly regretted her decisions. The pain in my children's voices was unmistakable. Roberta admitted that guilt had overwhelmed her and left her unsure of how to face the consequences of her actions. She reiterated her desire to reunite with us and claimed she could now provide a luxurious life for our family. As I looked at my children, their emotions were clear. Like me, they didn't believe her and they weren't willing to let her re-enter our lives, just by offering money to fix the damage she had caused. I firmly told Roberta that we had moved on and no longer needed her or her money. Then I handed her the divorce papers. She stared at them with a mixture of regret and disappointment, pleading once more, saying she genuinely wanted to make amends for the lost years. She even proposed splitting the proceeds from the lake house sale, suggesting it would benefit both of us. I know the divorce process will take time, but I am prepared for it. In the meantime, I plan to take a break from work and spend quality time with my children. A trip to Disneyland, a long-anticipated plan, is finally happening. I want to create joyful memories filled with laughter to counterbalance the pain of the past. Together, we can face whatever lies ahead with strength and resilience. Though this chapter isn't over yet, my children and I are writing a new story, one centered on love, trust, and growth. Update 4. Since my last update, I have some wonderful news to share. I was recently promoted at work, a milestone I've been working toward for years. This new role provides financial security and a sense of accomplishment, knowing my dedication has finally paid off. With this promotion, I'm earning enough to provide even more for my family. The divorce proceedings are progressing smoothly with the help of a skilled lawyer who, after understanding the situation, is confident in the case. Although the process isn't simple, it's a necessary step for closure and a fresh start. Throughout this time, my family and friends have offered unwavering support. Now that my finances are more secure, I plan to arrange therapy for Emily and Nathan. I recognize that they may carry abandonment issues and want to help them process their emotions and heal from any lingering trauma. After extensive research, I've found an experienced and compassionate therapist who specializes in working with children and families facing complex emotional challenges. As a parent, I also believe in fostering my children's passions outside of academics. Emily has a natural talent for art and spends hours creating beautiful paintings that now brighten our home. Nathan, on the other hand, excels at soccer, and we spend weekends cheering him on at his games. Seeing my children thrive brings me immense pride and joy. Regarding Roberta, we have no contact since that meeting in the park. I believe it's best to keep it that way. Surprisingly, her former partner Isaac reached out to me recently. Rather than offering an apology, he sent a bitter message filled with anger and resentment. He accused me of being the reason for his breakup with Roberta and blamed me for their relationship's failure. And his hurtful words and accusations only reinforced my conviction to leave that chapter of my life firmly behind. He accused me of having ulterior motives and claimed that I had manipulated Roberta into attempting to return to our family. His messages were hostile and unsettling, and I felt overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of his anger. It was hard to believe that this man had the nerve to be upset with me, considering he was the very reason my family had fallen apart 8 years ago. I replied to his message, making it clear that I had no intention of being with Roberta and was already in the process of finalizing a divorce. I reminded him of the pain and confusion my family endured when Roberta left us for him, and stated that he had no right to contact me. I emphasized how his actions had completely upended our lives and how much my children had suffered as a result. I also pointed out that if he needed someone to blame, he should look at himself and his gambling problem. After sending the message, I blocked him, hoping that would put an end to his attempts to contact me. I don't want him disrupting the peaceful life my children and I have worked so hard to rebuild. On the other hand, I do stay in touch with Roberta's mother occasionally, as she has always treated me with kindness. She has expressed regret over how everything turned out and supports my decision to do whatever I need to find happiness. Interestingly, her mother also shared that because I chose not to reconcile with Roberta, the lake house will no longer go to her, as her father had stipulated. This revelation caught me by surprise, but also felt like a fitting consequence. Roberta's selfish actions not only tore apart our family, but also destroyed another, so it seemed appropriate that she should face the repercussions of her decisions. Now it's time for me to focus on the future and let go of the past. The journey ahead won't be easy, but the process of healing is already well underway. My children are growing, thriving, and becoming remarkable individuals, and with each passing day, our future looks brighter.